Welcome, everyone, to the Week 7 weekly rankings here with Jim Coventry, doing this every Wednesday morning with you guys. And, of course, all the injury news and information throughout the week will probably start coming in a matter of hours, as you can see on the colored sheet in front of us here. A lot of different situations that we're trying to monitor and plan for, at least accordingly. But kicking off the quarterbacks overall, I think, has to be a Baker Mayfield conversation with what was at least breaking news just minutes ago. Emeka Egbuka probably not playing this week. I would have to imagine he's probably not playing week 8 as well with the Buccaneers on a week 9 bye. To me, Emeka Egbuka is out at minimum until week 10, and it's now sorting out how that Buccaneers receiving core looks. On paper, that's a difficult spot, but Baker Mayfield has been awesome and gets a Detroit secondary that is, I think, out their top 4 projected starters to begin the season, and missing Brian Branch due to stupidity, probably, once he gets suspended for the Chiefs things, too. So, I mean, this should be like the most wheels up of wheels up scenarios if Baker Mayfield wasn't throwing to my grandma. But yet we're going to probably see Baker Mayfield be a fantasy relevant guy once again with just the heroics he's been doing the past couple of weeks.
Joe, I just remember in the preseason, I'm not victory lapping here. I kept telling people, quit saying Baker Mayfield was a product of Liam Cohen. Yeah, he had a career year under him, but Baker Mayfield's been a good quarterback all but the year he tore up his shoulder and the year where Freddie Kitchens in year 2 was overmatched. Every other year, Mayfield has been a really good quarterback, and everybody slept on him. This dude gets it done, and he's the one player, and I say this every week, I can't give you analysis on him, because he just finds a way. That run on 3rd and 14 last week, ridiculous. Crazy. Talk about coming out of nowhere. 2 dudes hit him, and he shakes that, and then he jukes out like professional defensive backs who had him dead to rights, and he gets an extra half yard. And then what did he do the next play? Oh, there's Tez Johnson, busted coverage, 43-yard touchdown. I can't. You start Baker Mayfield every week. You trust him every week. Will he have a down week or 2 before the season's over? Yeah, he'll have a down week or 2. Good luck predicting him. But this man is a top 5 or 6 quarterback every week, regardless of opponent. No difference this week.
The circumstances that it feels like they're dealing with, we had the Tristan Wirfs part of it to begin the year. Chris Godwin wasn't back, and then you lose Mike Evans. Just as Chris Godwin does get back, then Godwin gets injured again. You have Emeka Egbuka emerge, and now Emeka Egbuka is in. I mean, like, it's incredible to me. I think there's been a lot of MVP conversation, not necessarily is what the weekly ranking show is about, but I fully support Baker Mayfield as the MVP for the first half of the NFL year. I think he's been fantastic despite it feels like everything possibly going wrong for the Buccaneers, and I think you have to have him in your lineup. He's a top 5 play for you. I think he's right around there for me. Right above him is an interesting one, and we can get into the Eagles' overall offensive situation just in a minute, but like, you had talked about in particular Kevin Patullo, offensive coordinator for the Eagles. Hey, let's be a little bit mindful of this. Like, he doesn't really have a whole lot of, like you would call it, legitimate coaching experience. Boy, oh boy, has that reared its ugly head really throughout the month of October in particular. Back-to-back embarrassing losses. Certainly the Thursday night game against the Giants was embarrassing. And it wasn't even so much that Cam Scadaboo and Jackson Dart did their thing, but it was that the Eagles, defending Super Bowl champions, a team that for at least 3 months last year was a pure juggernaut, has no idea how to get Saquon Barkley involved, can't use A.J. Brown effectively, Devonta Smith isn't. I can't figure out why the Eagles are struggling, and that makes me really nervous, even though if you drafted Jalen Hurts where you did, you probably have to play him regardless.
How do they? I mean, you got to fire him. You have to bring somebody in. There's somebody out there on the street who's coached an NFL offense that you could just say, look, you are the chef and you have all these great ingredients. You got filet mignon, you got lobster, you've got the best possible, you got caviar, you've got the best possible ingredients on the planet. The line is playing okay. It's not great. It's not what it was. It's good enough. And this offense should be scoring 30 points a week with no questions asked, but yet they're scuffling. This is a problem. Jalen Hurts, you're still starting him. Basically, he doesn't have the great upside every week, but his floor, he always gets you something for a floor. And so I have him as quarterback forward downside. Minnesota's going to blitz, but I don't know how much it really matters. Enough gets done. Hurts will either run for a touchdown, he'll throw. So fine enough there. But it's a mess. And starting your Eagles, it's a mess. Barkley's actually had a floor now, and that's been frustrating. Before our quarterbacks, I want to point out, Joe, I moved Patrick Mahomes up to number 2, and he may be sticking there the rest of the season. 2 weeks ago, Joe, I made a comment. I made 2 comments, actually. First thing I said was the Chiefs were coming off that loss to Jacksonville. But I said, right now, what I saw, I had more confidence in them for the rest of this year than I did when they were 15-2 last year. They looked like a bad team at 15-2 last year.
Yeah.
And they went to the Super Bowl. But I just saw all these things like emerging, like coming together. I also mentioned don't drop Pacheco. He was starting to look explosive. And I know the fantasy points aren't there yet, but we saw it again last week. He looks like his old self, and he may start getting more of the work here. This offense is going to be a juggernaut now that they have Rashee Rice back.
Yep, Rice coming back is, like you mentioned, is going to be a big part of it. I think from all indication is he's completely healthy, so this should be just literally slot and play. And I think if you have Rashee Rice, you've waited along this point, you're playing him as well too. At least a few of my lineups, I have to, and I think that elevates the Mahomes operation. The only issue is maybe if the pass catchers are better, Mahomes runs less. And that has been one of the reasons Mahomes has been very easily a top 5 quarterback, is that he's basically getting 50 yards a game and a touchdown, which is not normally part of his game. You weren't drafting Mahomes to go ahead and do that. Even still, I think that elevates with the Rashee Rice part of that from the passing game too. And I agree, he's easily up there as a must start for this week. 2 quarterbacks in yellow I wanted to discuss, and I think we're going on diverging paths for this. So first off, Brock Purdy, it sounds like he's closer to returning than Kyler Murray potentially, and we'll get into this in just a second, but Brock Purdy obviously has been banged up with that toe injury. It seems like a left shoulder injury as well too. The entire 49ers team possibly is injured with something. It's a bleak spot to be. However, I wonder if Kyler Murray ends up playing this week as well. Now, he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday of last week, did practice in limited fashion Friday, and then surprisingly was ruled inactive. The Cardinals have a bye next week after the Packers. It's possible they choose to hold off on playing Murray, but if Arizona has any playoff aspirations, they shouldn't, Jim, but they might. I think Kyler Murray needs to be out there. So it's really kind of a weird dichotomy, because you also have Marvin Harrison coming off a concussion. Theoretically, you would choose to wait one more week with the bye coming up, but the Cardinals might not have a choice, and they might have to play both Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. How do you see both Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy factoring in as low-end quarterback ones this week?
Now, remember, there's nothing. Remember, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are both off. Like, Jackson's been hurt, but they're both on bye. So everybody slots up a couple spots as well here, because they're normally 1 and 2 every week regardless. I know, again, Jackson's been out. The Kyler Murray thing, I have him in yellow. I have him as quarterback 10. If he does not put in full practices this week, we're recording on Wednesday. If he doesn't put in full practices, I'm going to move him down to 20. Why? Because if he doesn't put in full practice, that means his foot's not right. And what does that mean he can't do? Run. If he can't run, that his whole fantasy value is based on him being able to run for 35 or 40 yards a game. That's what his fantasy value is based on, because the passing stuff isn't really getting it done, but the rushing just buoys that enough to where he gets in that equation. So again, it's going to be full practice. Now, Jacoby Brissett, I loved him last week. He was like somebody like, yes, he's going to do great. Maybe not this week. Jacoby Brissett's a statue in the pocket. The Packers will bring pressure. That Arizona offensive line, not great. Not terrible, not great. They're going to see Brissett, and there's no credible running game here. Not credible at all. And so Brissett's going to be under a load of pressure. McBride's fine. Short area, get the ball out. But it's going to be a problem for Brissett this week if he's in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. People will be like, well, wait, Jim, wasn't Flacco a statue in the pocket? Bengals offensive line bad as well, too. Yes, Packers defense is stupid. That's the answer to this. Now, thankfully, the Cardinals don't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, which allows Flacco to make better throws. Jacoby Brissett can't do that to Zay Jones and Michael Wilson to a certain extent. I do think McBride will absolutely feast in the same scenario where Jacoby Brissett is your quarterback. But same spot with Flacco and Brissett, same bad offensive line, different receivers, which I think benefited Flacco against the Packers last week. Yeah.
I'm going to add something to that. I said Joe Flacco would be fine last week, because Joe Flacco, like you said, he has the 2 receivers, but they're going to run shotgun exclusively. And Flacco's been around. He's 40 years old. He's been reading defense forever. And basically, snap the ball, get it out, because your receivers are so much better than the corners covering them. You just get the ball in their hands. And Flacco's capable of doing that. Like you said, Jacoby Brissett doesn't have that luxury.
Right.
Marvin Harrison may have a lot of talent, and I don't even know if he'll play off a concussion, but he's not the guy that you're just getting it out immediately saying, all right, we got this. You know that Chase is going to create. So it's a totally different ball game here.
I appreciate Jesse sending a question here for us. This is not dynasty. It's 2 QB league question, but would you trade Jalen Hurts for Lamar Jackson rest of season? This is in, obviously with Lamar Jackson a bye, he's been banged up. You get Hurts playing for a couple more weeks, but Hurts also has his bye at a later point. I guess this really is a question of, do you think Lamar, when he comes back off the bye, will be healthy enough and you have zero concerns about the hamstring for the rest of the season?
Oh yeah, it would take Lamar in a heartbeat, because the big deal for this offense, and everybody says I'm nuts. Patrick Ricard is coming back. He finally put in limited practice before last week's game. So after the bye, he's going to be back. He is the catalyst for that entire offense, because when he's on the field, defenses have to play very heavy personnel. That's when you saw Lamar getting all the deep shots last year, because you've got to play them heavy. When Ricard's on the field, you could step people back. And all of a sudden, that downfield game for Lamar is not there. The whole offense will be back to normal after the bye because Ricard's back.
I agree with you. I'd rather have Lamar rest of season every single time, even if it means getting up Jalen Hurts. I appreciate the question, Jesse. That's a good one, a good thought exercise as well, too, as we really approach bye-mageddon here with 10 teams on bye over the course of Week 8 and Week 9. Let's move over to the running backs. And I did a Reddit Ask Accident Expert yesterday. I would imagine something like 20% of the questions, Jim, were related to, in some way, Rico Dowdle. And I think let's try to dive into this a little bit further. Back-to-back 200-yard-plus total games. Chuba Hubbard has been inactive for both of those. If Chuba Hubbard comes back, is the backfield now officially Rico Dowdle's to earn or have to lose? Or is this a split backfield? Does Chuba Hubbard get more of it? Like, I was a major Chuba Hubbard guy entering the season. I was last year as well, too. But Chuba Hubbard was not able to go for 200-plus total yards like Rico Dowdle has the past 2 weeks.
So this is where Jim, the football guy, is better than Jim, the football analyst, the fantasy football analyst. That Carolina offensive line, they were even missing Moton. The offensive line has been blocking their behinds off. Their tight ends, I saw them mauling people. They were just creating chasms of space. Do not go without noting, Dowdle did his damage against the pillow soft Miami defense, and we're seeing everybody tear them up. And then Dallas, again, not a good defense, especially when the offensive line is bringing it like Carolina did. Now, that 234-plus scrimmage yards of 2 straight games, nobody's done that. That's like 3 or 4 times in recent history, like over many years. It doesn't happen. So Chuba Hubbard is on a long-term deal they gave him last year. He can pass protect. And Rico Dowdle, and I did see him get his quarterback hit. And that's a big deal. And that's why he was keeping Hubbard was keeping Dowdle off the field. Hubbard, again, second year of a long-term deal. Dowdle's making 1 year, $3 million. It means something. And Dowdle is going to be in the mix. It's Hubbard's backfield. Now, maybe it's going to be more like, maybe it's going to be 60-40 as opposed to the 80-20 it was before. It might be a little closer. But don't forget that offensive line and those opponents had a lot to do.
Yeah, and calf injuries on both calves is a pretty nerve-wracking thing if you're talking about like the soft tissue stuff for Chuba Hubbard. If you are the Panthers watching what Rico has done the past 2 weeks, you can kind of afford as much time as you want for Chuba Hubbard. And also, and this was brought up in the chat, I'll agree with it and kind of mention it too, it's a bit of an audition to trade Rico Dowdle to a running back needy team with the trade deadline upcoming here, whether it be the Chargers or somebody else that here's multiple good weeks of tape. This is what happens in the scheme and system. Like, I would imagine best case scenario, Rico Dowdle goes for like a 6th round pick, but you would be very happy entering the year paying $3 million in free agent money to go ahead and get a 6th round pick. Like that does work that way at times if they do like Chuba Hubbard and feel good enough about him coming off of the multiple calf injuries. The other shaky backfield from last week was Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, which we talked about. And frankly, we got lucky. At least if we were only watching this recording or if you only read my waiver article on Tuesday, I had been championing Kamani Vidal as the guy. I thought of the two, Kamani Vidal is obviously the better running back. Then we had reports of Daniel Popper, I think like midday Wednesday, saying it was Hassan Haskins as next man up. Then you had Greg Roman saying both Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal will be the starters. And on Sunday, Ian Rappaport says Hassan Haskins is going to be the guy. Well, whoopsies, that was wrong because the former Michigan guy was obviously bad, as he's been for basically his entire career. And Kamani Vidal was awesome. This was against the Dolphins' run defense, which, lo and behold, we're back again with this, right? So how are you sorting through the Kamani Vidal part of this, knowing that Dolphins' run defense is one of the worst in the league? Because Vidal was objectively good. There were instances last year where the Chargers needed him to be this kind of back, and it didn't happen. So it was nice to see Vidal actually have it, even if it was against a juicy matchup. But we have still heard reports of the Chargers looking around for another running back to complement Omarion Hampton when he comes off injured reserve here in a month plus. What's your thoughts on how this backfield will shape out over the next couple weeks?
So if the Chargers truly believed in Vidal, they wouldn't have brought in Najee Harris, probably, right? They probably wouldn't have paid him $9.25 million, probably not. So they probably know he's a limited back. He's okay in doses, like all these guys. A lot of these guys on rosters, they can get something done for you. I am making it a point to keep saying Miami. I use the word pillow soft on purpose because I want everybody to know you start everybody against them. Everybody's going to go off against them because that team has no spine, no confidence, nothing. And so any player that does great against them, all right, great, thank you. I just got to see a player do it against another team. Rico Dowdle ended up doing that, but we'll see now what Vidal does. That said, I got Vidal at running back 26 because if he gets volume, that puts him in a running back 2-ish bucket for sure. Indianapolis, not a bad defense. They're pretty well coached. They're pretty aggressive. And the offensive line is still beat up for the Chargers. So this is one in game script. There's a good chance that the Chargers are getting pushed to score points by Indianapolis. So that might be one where Justin Herbert has to get a little more done than the running game. Even though that Miami game was close, it was never where they couldn't run the ball.
I completely agree with you. To the pillow soft defense point, there is one league where I'm playing Dylan Sampson this week because I am in desperate need of a James Cook replacement, and I have literally nothing else on waivers. I've been fighting injuries every week. I'm playing Dylan Sampson. I'm surprised that Quinshon Judkins isn't higher than 11 for you because I think Judkins is like a complete smash spot, but a lot of these other guys are like in a really good. The top tier of running backs is in a really good space week in and week out. That we're like quibbling between Judkins being 8 or 11. I don't think makes a big difference, but it's just kind of reinforcing the point. Miami run defense miserably bad, and I don't know how that changes for us of the season as well too. You had mentioned Isaiah Pacheco. We could talk about that a little bit as well, but from like a fringe running back 2 perspective, I'm looking at that list right now, which has Isaiah Pacheco at 31. We talked about Kamani Vidal at 26. Chase Brown from a pass catching perspective in a, I think, interesting Thursday night game as well too at 27. Tony Pollard's the one that I'm like, boy, I have zero faith in this Titans offense, and Tajay Spears is getting more involved. My co-host from the Monday podcast, Jake Latarski, actually was pushing Tajay Spears at the top waiver wire pickup this week because Spears is going to at least get some pass catching volume. I had said, boy, I don't want anything to do with the grossest offense in the NFL. And then a day later, Brian Callahan is now fired for the Titans, and maybe things change. So if you're looking at that running back 2 tier, and Tony Pollard, I've seen a lot of different SiriusXM leagues that people ask questions about, or any of the ones I get on social media and JB Fantasy Sports. I'm sure you see at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. Is there a spot for Tony Pollard that you think this Titans offense will improve, or is this low-end running back 2 kind of just what he's going to be all season?
We imagined that the Titans offensive line would be improved this year. They made moves. Latham was another game. He's been hurt all year. He hasn't been good when he's been on the field. The line has not done anything. And then their offensive line coach, who was Callahan's son, or Fallon's father, he left. So now the offensive line is going to have a new coach. So good luck with getting that shored up anytime soon, because that's going to be tough. So Pollard is just basically, he's going to get you 12 carries. You hope he breaks one run for 20-ish yards. You hope, and he hasn't been near the end zone because his team doesn't score points.
Right.
That's the problem. There's like no touchdowns to be had. And then, like you mentioned, Spears is in on passing downs now. So basically, Pollard is a low floor. Hope he falls in the end zone, get you double-digit touches, and hope for one good run. And that's about all he is right now.
Dare I say he's basically Bam Knight? I mean, that's the way I describe best case scenario for Bam Knight. And Bam Knight might have a better chance to score a touchdown with the way the Titans have been going right now. It's just a tough break if you're looking at it from that perspective. I don't know. Is there any other running backs that you want to discuss? Otherwise, I think there's a lot of questions we can do about the receiver position.
Just real quick, Thursday night, Jaylen Warren is in a really, really good spot against Cincinnati. Cincinnati, once you get to the second level, the linebackers are horrible. They might get Warren a couple screens out there on linebackers, and also if he gets that second level, he could have a good game. Now, Kenny Gainwell's involved, but yeah, I really like Warren. I have an upside mark this week.
I know that we normally have you answer the start set questions on Sunday, 2 hours before kickoff, whatever time zone you're in. It's been a fantastic thing you've done all season now, multiple seasons on the RotoWire YouTube channel. I'm only asking you this because you mentioned Jaylen Warren, but also because that will be a Thursday game, and theoretically you can't have that. Abraham is asking, who do you start, Mike Evans over Sutton, DeAndre Swift over Jaylen Warren? Like, Swift has this monster game in the monsoon, in that win over the Commanders, poor tackling overall. Swift has not been that sort of back at any other point this year. And then Mike Evans over Sutton, it's a matter of, do you trust Mike Evans being healthy for a Monday Night Football game?
Yeah, so right now with Mike Evans and not knowing his status, and you've got to make that decision, I think you've got to just say right now you can't really go with him. So I would start, if I was going to start Evans over one of them, it wouldn't be Warren because of the Thursday night thing. I want more clarity. So get to the end of the weekend. If Evans has full practices, now you could pick a Sunday player. And Sutton, we're saying, I'm trying to think who they're playing
Sutton
here.
and then Swift as well, too, would be a Sunday game as well.
Sutton against the Giants is a really good spot, so I would not want to sit him there coming off a really poor game. DeAndre Swift, like you said, I know it was a great game, but like Joe, you mentioned, it was sloppy.
Right.
It was the Commanders just didn't show up on defense. New Orleans actually is decent against the run, and that's not a good matchup. I would play him over DeAndre Swift.
Okay. All right. There you go. Appreciate that question, Abraham. So moving over to the receivers, we've had some attrition at the position. Obviously, lost Malik Neighbors, Tyreek Hill for the season. We've lost Jamar Chase due to ineptitude for a little bit. We lost CeeDee Lamb for a month now at this point. And now add to that mix Puka Nacua, who was literally the wide receiver one and would have probably been the entire year. It seems very sure that he will at least miss this week here, week 7. The Rams are on bye week 8. I don't know even if he ends up playing week 9. We have yet to have that information yet. And frankly, the Rams probably have zero reason to go ahead and give that information out until we get close to that point. So with that being said, it just means the guys that have been disappointing, like the A.J. Browns, have to still continue to be played because we're losing more and more top-end quality receivers. Like Brian Thomas has his first good game, it feels like, in quite a while. Even then, that felt a little bit fluky for Jacksonville, too. Yes. The state of that late first round, early second round receiver group, and again, just going over that list now with A.J. Brown and Brian Thomas in there, like, what is there a turning point coming? Because I don't know if we can even wait for it, but with all the injuries we've had to that position, there's maybe 3 or 4 guys that I'm like, well, I mean, if you can trade something for them, if you could do a Quentin Johnston plus for Brian Thomas Jr., I understand the other side of that equation too. So your overall thoughts on that like group of receivers that, again, were like ADP of 11 through 15 to 18, Lab McConkey in that range too.
Look, we're 6 weeks in. Your fantasy regular season is 14 weeks. For the most part, the die has been cast. Can something crazy happen? Sure. But betting on that, I don't think that's a good bet at this point. If a player has not been reliable for 6 weeks, I think it's in a short, small sample size season. I don't think it's reasonable to project and keep making narratives to say, well, this will get fixed. 6 weeks, it should have been fixed already. So unless there's an extenuating circumstance like Joe Flacco coming in, and again, sure. I think Flacco's functional for T. Higgins. I think he is functional for him. So you could buy that narrative. But anything where the situation of the team hasn't changed, no. And you're right to call it the Brian Thomas thing. Seattle was down 2 starting corners and a starting free safety. The touchdown was a wide open pass on a busted coverage. And they can't run Thomas over the middle of the field. He makes mistakes all the time in the middle of the field. So he's just basically becoming a boundary. They'll throw him in the middle of the field stuff, but then he drops it. He alligator arms it. He's got real issues to work through. And then when his quarterback's pressured, that's another problem. So yeah, but I don't see it, Joe. I think you're right that the die is cast on these guys.
Yeah, and again, Marvin Harrison maybe add to that mix too, and left early last week's game with concussion. Cardinals on a bye the following week. Normal teams wouldn't necessarily rush them back with that bye week coming up, whether it be Kyler Murray or Marvin Harrison. We'll have to see, though, because if the Cardinals lose against the Packers this week, their season might be effectively over. So it's a hard way to sort of put those two together. Yeah,
that's not a choice, Joe. That's not a choice for them. That's a neurological.
Well, yeah.
If
I mean, I'm a pessimist,
plays,
but I understand. Yes.
And the common norm, it's been recently, the overwhelming majority is they don't play that first week now. We'll see a few exceptions. It used to be the majority played the next week.
Right.
Now it's the majority sit 1 week.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. The Brian Dable going into the blue tent room and like screaming at those guys, that drew something last Thursday. I, especially in the doors of the facility, think that happens more often than not. And that's me as a worldview that views things pessimistically. I should not do that. That's not a good thing. But I often envision how that happens. So maybe I naively am not trusting the neuro guys to be able to make their own sane calls. But watching Dable do that, I mean, it's I'm not going to get into it. But yes, that's how my opinion is on that. No, the rant would go outside of football, and I don't need to do that here. Just because my Brewers stink doesn't mean I have to have that permeate throughout everything else going on. There are a couple of receiving rooms that I think are interesting, but also kind of clouded. And we'll start first with the 49ers. Juwan Jennings evidently is dealing with 55 different broken bones. That might be an exaggeration. I'm not entirely positive. Ricky Pearsall sounds like he's closer to returning than not. George Kittle might be back this week as well, too. Brock Purdy might be back as well. Let's answer it this way. Juwan Jennings is severely banged up. Maybe he keeps powering through because he's a soldier. But if Ricky Pearsall is back, if George Kittle is back, can you play Kendrick Bourne? Because Bourne for the past 2 weeks has been a godsend for a lot of folks. And it's arguable that maybe you have Bourne out there over Juwan Jennings, given everything that he's been dealing with.
Kendrick Bourne is interesting. Now, I pointed out, actually, that week before he went off against Rams, I had him as my wide receiver 36.
Correct.
And it was that Mac Jones has a history with him back to New England. Mm-hmm. So there's chemistry there. And we saw the chemistry. And here's the thing, though. We don't know if Mac Jones is starting, first of all. But here's the second thing. Mac Jones is great when he's kept clean. Atlanta has been incredible at pressuring the quarterback. I don't know how they're doing it. They're a really fast defense. And if Mac Jones is in and that pressure is coming, it's not the best matchup. And if Kittle's out and Pearsall's out, I guess you do go to Bourne again. You definitely go to him. But if they're both back on the field, then not so much, because Bourne has been winning in a lot in the intermediate area. Yep. And I don't know the way Atlanta's been playing. The intermediate area is going to be there consistently. The middle intermediate will be there, but not the perimeter. The middle, like the Kittle, that's a quicker developing play.
I was wondering if the Brock Purdy from Mac Jones switch was going to be part of it. That's why I brought it up, because I think you were the first and frankly one of the only people I heard, Jim, that mentioned that Kendrick Bourne had rapport with Mac Jones, and that was maybe one of the reasons why you should be playing Kendrick Bourne that week. I was on DeMarcus Robinson, for example, when we were trying to figure out what that would look like. And you were immediately on that. I think that was the correct call. Maybe the switch from Purdy makes a difference. I think Purdy and Mac Jones are comparable quarterbacks. There isn't a big downgrade, especially when you have the floor that Kyle Shanahan gives you from an offensive perspective. It's going to be really tough. Again, we're recording this Wednesday morning as to how that 49ers passing attack will actually look like.
There's one big difference between the quarterbacks. Mac Jones under pressure isn't good. That's why he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan loves that he can extend plays. He is outstanding at the second reaction, and that's what Shanahan needs in his offense. And so a lot of people are pointing out the numbers that Mac Jones puts up, but understand Purdy gives Shanahan what he needs. And those second reaction plays are what lead to those big George Kittle touchdowns, and things like that. Those are the key. And so that's the main difference between the two. You're right. In terms of functional, if they're just in the pocket, no real pressure, they're very similar. It's just that one detail. And in the game, if Atlanta can get that pass rush going, and Uncle Ted, the athlete, points out, Atlanta's been a monster at home. On the road, they've been more like a kitten. So, but it's short. It's a real small sample size. So I don't think we can make those broad assumptions yet. Right now, that defense looked really fast.
I'll give a shout out to a friend of the RotoWire podcast station, but The Athletic, which Robert Mays and Dan Klaskin and the crew, they do a fantastic job talking football. I would love for you guys to listen to every one of our podcasts. We post them daily throughout the week from a fantasy football perspective. If you want to hop on the RotoWire YouTube channel and listen to us as well too, great. But if you could save time to listen to Robert Mays and company talk about the game of football, I think they do a fantastic job doing so. And Monday's show, they actually broke down the Falcons pass rush, what they're doing with Caden Ellis, the cornerback blitzes off the edge, and I think that actually was one of the more illuminating discussions about football, and especially the way defense is played, that I have seen in some time. So I love those guys. I listen to them every week. They are a part of my daily rotation as I'm driving around. It feels like 5 hours a day dropping off the kid who knows where. But the Athletic Football Podcast, Robert Mays and company, do a fantastic job. Friends of ours, certainly, and friends of the RotoWire crew, but just really good football people as well that you should listen to if you're not, or after you're listening to us. All right, so that was one of the receiving corps, the 49ers. Next one was a new one added to this list with the Los Angeles Chargers. Here we go. Pillow defense. Let's keep reminding ourselves. Chargers played the pillow defense of the Dolphins. Quentin Johnston was a surprise inactive. At least he was to me. There was an idea that he was going to be banged up. I didn't really get the sense he was going to miss time until he was ruled out on Sunday. Lab McConkey breaks out for his big game that fantasy managers have been desperately hoping for. And Oronde Gadsden also looks pretty good as a multi-targeted guy. There's Keenan Allen there. Keandre Lambert-Smith gets more playing time. Trey Harris gets more playing time. This one, Jim, I can finally do the Jim Coventry. I called this because I thought the answer would be My golly gee, if the Chargers offensive line has literally you and me starting out there, what should be the thing we should do with Justin Herbert? Get the ball out quick. And you can do that when you have Gadsden, Keenan Allen, Lab McConkey, multiple rookie receivers that are all really, really good in the intermediate to short routes. Quentin Johnston being a deep route specialist, a shot play more or less, there's utility for him, but Lab McConkey can do that. We saw it last year. Lo and behold, that's what happened. Lab McConkey kind of absorbed Quentin Johnston's role, and you still had all the other pieces become that short pass threat. If the Colts push the Chargers to score points like you mentioned earlier, and I think that will happen, dare I say Lab McConkey, Keenan Allen, all those guys are plays once again, because while it's a different defense and better defense, the game script feels very close to me in this match against the Colts, what we saw from last week.
If you notice, Keenan Allen's numbers have gone down. He gets the same amount of targets, 7+ a week. First 3 games, he was over 60 yards. The last 3, he's got like a 27 to 37 and something in the low 50s. I wonder if defense has figured out, oh, he can't get behind us at all, so we just plan to press him a little bit more. I wonder what's happening with that. I'm kind of seeing that, but also I wonder if at 33, maybe he's already hit the wall, which is possible. But he's still, so right now in the last 3 weeks, Keenan Allen has become more of a PPR flex. Before he was like a wide receiver 2 the first 3 weeks of the season. But I'm glad you called it, because I was talking about that in the XM show this weekend about what they would do, that they would get it out quick. I said, game of the season for McConkey, and it was exactly like you said what happened as well, and that's what they need to do, and Herbert can do that, and so that's going to continue to work. I didn't see the Gadsden one coming, which probably should have, but I didn't, but it was cool to see him have that nice game as well. But you're right, there's going to be a lot of receptions, and that's the way this offense is going to have to function, and they're going to have to score points against Indy, and Indy's cornerback room in their secondary is brutal. Charvarius Ward is the only one who's good, and he got a concussion pregame last week. I guess he ran into his tight end.
Did you see that video by chance?
I did not.
We shouldn't joke about obviously brain injuries. He got knocked out comically. Like, here's like laying down on the ground. It felt like what you would see if you were watching one of those you got up shots or videos, whatever. Like, he just was completely knocked out. Yeah. So that's obviously not a good thing, and I would imagine he doesn't play this week either. I mean, that looked like a very serious thing.
Yeah, and that was the point. Their secondary's terrible, and again, with a concussion, it seems more unlikely that Ward's not going to play this week. And so total wheels up here for the receivers, McConkey, and you meet Gadsden again. And like I said, Keenan Allen's a floor play right now. We don't know if Quentin Johnston's going to play. But the one thing I'll say about Indy, though, Indy's sack numbers haven't been great, but they could bring the pressure. They have been getting pressure, just not getting home. And again, Pipkins was out last week, so they're down to a third-string right tackle, second-string left tackle. Keep a note on that. Even if Pipkins, who's not very good, but if he's out again and Alt is out again, it's going to be that short passing game again, and just keep betting on these Charger receivers.
We had talked about Baker Mayfield being a superhero earlier in the show. What Baker Mayfield can do when running is really incredible, and wasn't one of those things that we saw in Cleveland, but we knew he could be that level of athlete. Herbert isn't that, but I do think Herbert, superpower, he's got a lot of them. He is really good moving around the mess in the pocket. Like, if the Colts are providing pressure, Herbert can do that. He's unfortunately literally had to do it his entire career, so he has a lot of practice, Jim. So that's one of the things I think Herbert can like, that's an advantage the Colts will have, is the pass rush, but Herbert solely mitigates that. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I have zero idea who's going to win this football game.
Right.
The Chargers, with all the injuries they've had, I would assume would be I would take the Colts in the way they've been playing. However, I think both teams are pretty similar. I'm excited for that game. Quentin Johnston, if he's healthy, is a play for me. I'll still play Lab McConkey, even though I'm expecting a little bit less production. And I do think I'll play Keenan Allen too, because I'm expecting a lot of offense on both sides of the ball. The last receiving core that I wanted to talk. Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Real quick, I want to make one point. You mentioned Baker Mayfield and running. This is the one thing that's changed about his running game. Earlier in his career, he thought he was a hotshot athlete, and he would get to the outside thing, he could outrun linebackers, and he never did. He's learning now, I run up the middle. That's how his game has changed. I just wanted to point that out to the listeners. That's why he's a more effective runner than he was. He knows who he is now, as opposed to that guy just thinking he can outrun everybody.
Baker Mayfield a hot shot? I never would have thought he would think that way. Interesting. All right, last receiving core, and this one's a very difficult one. As again, we're recording this Wednesday morning. We outlined it a little bit with the Buccaneers, but this was basically the context of my waiver wire article up now on the RotoWire site. 15% off. YouTube 15 gets you access to RotoWire itself right there. You can see the code throughout our various different videos as well too on the station. We have Mike Evans possibly returning. Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka, at least right now, out for this game. Buccaneers on a week 9 bye. The assumption is that along with Emeka Egbuka and Bucky Irving, that most of these guys who are banged up, Chris Godwin, won't play just this week, but also they won't play week 8 as well. There is Cade Otton, there is Tez Johnson, and then there is Cameron Johnson. And I had made the joke in the article, maybe fell flat for a few people, but I know you as a veteran of the fantasy sphere, I said this could be like the 30% version of Adrian Peterson the Bears or Adrian Peterson the Vikings, because when we talk about Johnson & Johnson, not a law firm here, I don't know which, people are going to get confused with Tez Johnson and Cameron Johnson. Tez Johnson scores the long touchdown, doesn't get a lot of volume. Cameron Johnson is their punt returner who gets more playing time with Emeka Egbuka out. But previous weeks, Tez Johnson had been getting close to about 20 to 30 snaps per game. I think if it's like we're projecting right now, it's Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson. And against this Lions secondary, who we talked about earlier, is missing 4 of its projected starters and Brian Branch for being dumb, I think we're going to be talking about Tez Johnson as a possible very deep desperate play this week.
Man, you look at my rankings. I scrolled them up so we're down the bottom. You see 3 green marks. Sterling Shepard, wide receiver 50 with upside. Cameron Johnson, 53 with upside. Tez Johnson, 55 with upside. Because I don't know which one of them will hit. It's the Baker Mayfield quagmire. Like I said earlier, so gets it done every week. But you have no idea where it's going. I mean, Ibuka's there. Ibuka's, but he ain't playing. And one of these guys is going to go off in this game. And now if Mike Evans is fully healthy, then maybe it's just the Evans and Otton show. That's possible. But it's a mess but if Evans is out, any 3 of these players are live flexes with big upside because any one of them could have 2 touchdowns. Any one of them could have 70 yards. It could have, and they all could end up also, though, with 2 catches for 13 yards. And so that's what you're looking at here. You have no idea who's going to get it done, but somebody will.
The bad analysis people will be like, well, Travis Kelce ate up the Lions last week, therefore Cade Otton will too. They are very different players, and the Chiefs use Travis Kelce very differently than what the Buccaneers use Cade Otton. I happen to think the linebacking group for the Lions is pretty good between Jack Campbell and Anzalone. They're good enough coverage linebackers, and the way that the Buccaneers use Otton isn't like McBride, isn't like Travis Kelce. No. He's normally like a seam stretcher. I mean, truly, if Cade Otton gets 3 catches for 60 yards, that's a very Cade Otton line. But when you're the Buccaneers and just going down the next man up circus, which has been happening right now the past 3 weeks, Otton could get schemed volume. It just won't be the exact same way that Travis Kelce was. So I don't want people to make that mistake. I could very well see that on social media circles as, oh, well, Kelce got 7 for 60 and probably should have more if he did this and this. Cade Otton will too. That's not exactly what I think will happen, especially if Mike Evans is available for this Monday night game.
I want to quickly bring up the depth chart. I'm going to tell you about the Cade Otton had 3 games last year where they were without Evans and Godwin. And he ate. And I'm going to tell you right now what he did. In those games, so it was week 7, he goes 8 for 100 on 10 targets against Baltimore. Against Atlanta, he goes 9 for 81 and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets against Atlanta. And then the third game those receivers were out, he plays Kansas City, goes 8 for 77 and a touchdown. So basically his PPR points in those games, it was 18, 29, and 21. So this is in the range of outcomes here. Like you said, the linebackers are good in coverage, but if Evans is out, Cade Otton is probably going to be a big factor in this one. And I'm going to move him way up the rankings if Evans is out. But if Evans plays, like you said, you just be careful because it's really a function of him being without all the top receivers.
I do think that's a Liam Cohen thing. That was the reason why Brenton Strange ended up getting drafted in a lot of places, of course, on injury reserve now for Jacksonville. But that was a selling point for why Strange was going to be used for Trevor Lawrence and company. We always answer this question. Maybe this is just more of a me thing, but we've had this conversation before. What is the path of least resistance? When we are planning offenses, what is the path of least resistance to get points? And that's what you're going to have to do against Detroit. Is it trying to bang your head, making Cade Otton be Trey McBride for 1 week against the Lions? Baker Mayfield can do that. Cade Otton's certainly capable. But if the path of least resistance is targeting the Lions' fourth-string cornerback as their best corner with your third-string receivers who are athletic, speedy, and young, I think that's my answer to it. Like if I'm game planning for things, I would rather have the Cameron Johnson and Tez Johnsons of the world be more factors. No idea, and unfortunately, we're probably not going to know until the weekend. Like with a Thursday game being critical of playing guys between T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, you're playing Metcalf no matter what, but like there's some ancillary Steelers pieces too. You might have to make this call. How do you envision Monday looking compared to how do you envision Thursday looking? And I can guarantee if you're playing against me in any leagues, all your Thursday players will do really well because I've had very bad luck against that. So just keeping in mind, I think we went very expansive with this Buccaneers conversation because it's important for this week. And it's ironic because there's only 2 teams on bye. Next week, it's going to get even more gross with 6 teams on bye in week 8. So before we round up the show here, let's get to the tight ends just a little bit. And again, Jake Ferguson's at the top. I think McBride, like if like your DFS showdown leagues, I think McBride could go for like 14 for 100. That's the one area in which the Cardinals I think will very easily attack the Packers defense this week. Is Trey McBride just absolute monster? Tyler Warren still getting a lot of work. Tucker Kraft scores his touchdown last week, otherwise isn't getting super involved. Dallas Goedert has been the only beneficiary of this dumb Eagles offense. I had a question earlier in the Reddit Ask an Expert that we did yesterday. Would you trade like a Wan'Dale Robinson or Devonta Smith for Dallas Goedert? And I felt physically ill answering that question, saying yes, because I'm not a Dallas Goedert guy whatsoever. But it's hard to ignore what's been happening despite all the self-inflicted adversity the Eagles have been putting on themselves. Like Dallas Goedert is entering must-start territory, it feels like.
Weirdest season for Dallas Goedert. He gets 7 targets in week 1, and then he misses week 2 with an injury. 2 games back. 2 and 4 targets, very little targets, but he scores 3 touchdowns over those 2 games. Great. So then against Denver, he gets 9 targets, does very little, but he finds the end zone. Again, he's found the end zone in 4 straight games. And then last week, he had everything put together. 11 targets, 9 for 110, outplaying both of the other receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Obviously, Dallas Goedert is not the answer for this offense. But right now they're using him like he is the answer for the offense. Barkley's the answer. A.J. Brown's the answer. Right. Devontae Smith's the answer. Goedert's a great player. He's a great player. But they cannot figure anything out. But in the short term, you have to assume Kevin Patullo is not figuring anything out. So you keep riding Goedert. He is a sell high, though, because at some point, somehow, some way, they're going to figure out that he is not the player they want to run their offense through. They will figure that out. I just don't know if it's going to be in week 7 or in week 12.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you. This would be one of those I wouldn't trust entering the fantasy playoffs, but yet you might not have a choice with all the bye weeks coming up. Last tight end I'll ask you about is Evan Ingram, who for at least the first 4 weeks ended up being a drop candidate in a lot of places. I was one of the bigger Evan Ingram guys here at RotoWire. Couldn't have been more wrong about that. Very, very aware and admitting still that I was wrong about that situation. Yet back-to-back weeks, been more involved in that offense. I don't know what to make because I despise Bronco players outside of Cortland Sutton. Sean Payton feels like he's deliberately toying with all of us, and it feels like he thinks he's like this Mad Hatter, and yet if the Mad Hatter was just like playing with dynamite every day and hoping it doesn't blow up, like this isn't an effective way to be an offense, and yet it's still happening. So is Evan Ingram getting more is he getting more volume to the point where you can reliably use him, or is your number 9 ranking for him this week just due to the situation and revenge game against his former Giants team who took him in the first round?
It's probably the floor. He has seen 6 or 7 targets in 3 straight games. I do think the matchup against the Giants is very favorable. I baked in a little bit of revenge narrative too.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna be guilty of that one. All right, Ingram might have a little extra something for the Giants here. He played many years with them. All that said, the targets are there. Bo Nix, the The coach,
Right.
Sean Payton, is telling us what he feels about Bo Nix.
Yes.
He doesn't trust him at all. He's got to roll him out. He's not running a traditional offense because his quarterback can't do it. Footwork is always a mess. You don't know where the ball is going with him because that footwork thing, it sounds stupid, but if your feet are not setting in rhythm, the ball is not going where you want it to go every time. And that's why Nix is a real inconsistent player. But we do know they're layering in a lot of underneath stuff. And if Ingram's going to get you the 4 or 5 catches the last 3 weeks, the yards have gone up a little each week from 29 to 33 to 42. If you're talking about 7 or 8 PPR points out of a tight end, that's not bad. That's not a bad game. It's a good floor game, and there always is a chance for one to break a little extra yardage. There is a chance he's seeing red zone targets, so there's a chance he can get in the end zone. So he's one of those plays. He's a borderline tight end one, but I do like this matchup for him.
I think that's a great call. The way that you would describe Evan Ingram as a guy that's getting floor, but also has red zone targets, that last part's the difference over Narondai Ganstead, who I don't think gets a lot of red zone targets, even though the Chargers' offense is better. That last part's important for Harold Fannin, who I think gets a bump if David Njoku misses major time. Fannin gets more of a floor, but even still, I don't think the Browns score a lot of touchdowns, and if Dylan Gabriel can only throw 5 yards in the middle of the field, at some point, defenses can probably key in on that and make Harold Fannin not be a thing. The other one, and this is just an overall conversation, Mason Taylor was a massive disappointment for the Jets this past week. I've been touting Mason Taylor in the waiver wire article. I am not relinquishing on that. I actually think now with Garrett Wilson out for possibly an extended period of time, it's not Josh Reynolds. It certainly isn't Alan Lazard. I think Mason Taylor becomes the team's top target. And this week against the Panthers, it might be junk time production once again, but I actually don't mind Mason Taylor if you have to go down this low-end flex tight end route.
I understand that it makes total sense. I am very concerned about how defenses play the Jets without Garrett Wilson. There is no player on the receiving end that a defense has to respect in any single way. I expect to see 9 men up on many plays to say, you know what? Breece Hall, you're not going to run on us. Justin Fields, you're not going to run on us. And also we have 9 up front. We're going to be sending pressure from all over because we know Justin Fields isn't going to have a chance. He has nobody to go to. Mason Taylor, I like him. But right now, with no cover from Garrett Wilson, who has to draw double coverage, I just don't know that Justin Fields is going to throw for 80 yards here. And that's not hyperbole. He has a couple games, and I know he got knocked out of the Buffalo game, but he wasn't going to throw for 100 in that game.
Right. No, I agree.
Carolina's not a good defense. But if you're going to tell me that there is no credible receiving threat on the team, that they're not going to sell everybody out to get after that, I like I said, love Mason Taylor like you do. I just think this is a week I would, even if you have Breece Hall, you hope he breaks one, because if they play that many made up and he breaks one, he gets to the second level, he could house an 80-yard touchdown. So I guess there's that, but it is dim.
No, I agree with you. As somebody that's has Fields in probably one of my prominent leagues, I've watched far too many Jets games for my liking this season. People were astounded how poorly they played in that London game. That's been the game script I've watched them do all year. Just mind-numbingly dumb ways to use Justin Fields. The most, I'm trying to make sure I'm saying words that are appropriate for our YouTube station, but the most passive aggressive offense you could possibly do. More read options than pass attempts for the first half is like something I've seen multiple times happen for the Jets. And I have to imagine that just gets accentuated even more with no Garrett Wilson likely this week and possibly longer. I don't want to play Fields. I would still be okay with Mason Taylor from a volume part, because if this game gets out of hand, that we've seen that happen as well too. But it is a bleak thing to be if you are in need of Mason Taylor playing, as I am in a few places. So I think that does it. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick on that. I kind of lost my train of thought. We were talking about the Jets. Justin Fields, he's making the mistake of trying to be a quarterback. He's sitting back in the pocket, and there are running lanes, and he's not taking them. It's like he was taking those sacks. There were many times he could have just taken off up the middle and probably gotten 15, 20 yards. He's got to stop trying to be a quarterback right now. He needs to be a runner first and a passer second for fantasy, and also to keep him at least competitive enough where the coaches, because he's going to get benched. If this keeps up, Tyrod Taylor will be the starter. If you're in a super flex league right now, stash Tyrod Taylor, because if Fields soils the bed this week, and Aaron Glenn needs to go away too. He needs to be done, but they have to consider playing Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I actually like that's a great call at the super flex part of things for Tyrod Taylor. There's unfortunately so many options, but if you are cycling between Mac Jones and Jacoby Brissett, maybe a Cooper Rush in your roster because you're that desperate, maybe that's a good time to change out Cooper Rush for Tyrod Taylor because I do think we're going to be seeing that soon. I had assumed that wouldn't happen this year. The only time Tyrod Taylor was going to play was if Fields was injured. Well, it did happen, right? Fields got injured and Tyrod Taylor did okay, but I was not expecting it to be this inept. This pantsless, it feels like from an offensive perspective, and has been. So I think that does it for us here on the Wednesday edition of the weekly rankings here with Jim Coventry. You could see Jim on this station here on this channel Sunday, 2 hours before kickoff. You will be at least talking a little bit about the London game. Hopefully it'll be a bit more entertaining than last week's game as well too. You will obviously be on SiriusXM on Saturday as well. Wait, are you on Friday too? Because I know I will not be this Friday.
I don't think I'm on Friday. It's probably Alan Soslowski.
All right. Well, our guy, Alan Soslowski, does a fantastic job, too, and I think he's filling in for me this Friday as well. But otherwise, if you have any questions from a start-sit perspective, Jim does a great job on the station. Otherwise, Jim Coventry, NFL on Twitter, does a great job as well, too. Appreciate you all following along. Back again this time next week. Thanks, everyone, for listening.